On today's episode of The Strange Show, I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Michael Hutchcraft. Michael Hutchcraft is the president of Glacier Consulting, which is a company that specializes in helping repair shops, tech depots, and pretty much anyone in the wireless services industry become R2 and ISO certified. If you're looking to certify your business to kind of help take your growth to the next level by accessing supply chains that are not currently available to you without having the R2 certification or being ISO certified, or whether you're just wanting to stand out amongst the competition, Glacier Consulting is definitely a highly recommended agency that can help guide you through the path with as little headaches as possible. They have many years of experience of helping other shops and businesses across the country become certified, and they can definitely help you. Definitely check them out if you're interested in this, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's conversation. Today's sponsor is my company, XiRepair. If you need your electronic device repaired, check out XiRepair.com. We are a WISE certified facility and have repaired over 40,000 devices since 2018. If you need your cell phone, laptop, computer, game console, or even data recovered, XiRepair can help you. Now, on to my conversation with Michael Hutchcraft. I wanted to start off by asking you, man, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and I was unaware that you had such an extensive legal career.
Yeah,
You went.
I practiced law for 11 years before I got into the certification work.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting, I think, kind of a point to start, because practicing for 11 years in what was really kind of like a corporate law and estate planning world, from what I could read, transitioning that to environmental compliance, like how did that happen, dude? And walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked for some of the largest law firms in North Carolina and Florida and Illinois, and I got an opportunity to go to work for a company called Clover Technologies Group in the general counsel's office, and I just by opportunity got involved in environmental compliance, and along came this certification known as R2. The company was expanding into the cellular market and the telecom market, so R2 just played a natural role for that. And I took the lead, and it just spoke to me. And I started to make a transfer over from total legal practice into the environmental compliance, which go hand in hand. One of the great things about the environmental certifications out there is that they require a compliance feature to it. So you have to know what your facility, what your building, what your company needs to be in compliance to, and so therefore it just goes hand in hand.
Makes sense. So is Clover a kind of like R2 facility, or were they mainly just there to actually help develop the certification process, or like
Oh
kind
no,
of?
no, they were R2 facilities. At one point we had many. I don't remember the exact number, but I was on the corporate team required with the responsibility of building R2 programs and then maintaining them in not only in the United States but Mexico and Canada. They're a big recycler. They still exist. I have great memories, great friends still working there. But all of that led to me moving on to Glacier and now doing what I do. So I have nothing but love for Clover and everything I learned there.
That's really awesome. Yeah, no, I was just really trying to understand kind of where you came from, because I think it's
Yeah, it's kind of unique. You will find a lot of people who practice law eventually may move on to something else, but you always keep that, the education's there, the experience is there. And it's interesting because I always run into instances helping clients be protected through compliance related issues. And I use my education every single day. So it's amazing for me.
That's interesting. Fun fact about me, you may not know this, but I actually have a forensics firm on the side of my company. I was asked about 4 years ago by an attorney in our area to help basically be an expert witness in a pretty big legal case in our state.
Okay.
And that case ran on for like almost 2 years. Ended up having the piece of evidence that helped basically win that case. And since, I've been doing quite a bit of like forensics work for basically law firms and the state themselves.
That's
As
amazing.
a expert witness. So a lot of respect for obviously what you had to do as an attorney, and it's not easy work for sure. very
No,
tedious.
yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate that. And I'm looking back upon it, I can't see any other route for me. I mean, that was what I wanted to do. I did it for, like I said, 11 years, and then it just transferred nicely into what I do now. Because clients have issues. Clients have some clients can get themselves into trouble, and being able to help them get through the process is something that I think puts me in a unique position.
Yeah, and obviously like the legal perspective of everything helps as well. Um,
Absolutely.
Completely random from R2 and Glacier Consulting, but do you currently use any like LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these language models yet in any of the businesses that you're running?
I haven't really gotten involved in that, Jonathan. The biggest I've done lately is like like an AI note taker that I do for meetings. I really get involved with all the clients, so I haven't gotten there yet. Some of the things I do is a little old school, but it works for me and it works for them. So
Yeah, I was asking mainly because I think I've used it quite a bit, and man, it's really powerful. Like it really, I think, is going to change the legal world a lot, just because
right,
you can get answers to, you were an estate planner. I can ask questions about how I should set up my assets and who the ownership should be to properly structure tax incentives and all those things from these models, and it's crazy how accurate it is. Ask what state, it'll know what state you're from and where you live, and you can give it all that information, and suddenly you have someone that knows as much about you. That's going to take quite a bit of time for any attorney to figure out and find out. So
right. I know there's a little it's a little scary, right? It's a little scary, like, what are we gonna eventually walk away from needing humans? But the level that I've been involved in AI, it's pretty amazing.
yeah, it's definitely revolutionary technology. So, you talked about kind of coming from Clover and then in starting Glacier Consulting. What was kind of your reason for wanting to do that? You saw
Well,
a need, and what was that need?
yeah, so let's back up just a little bit. I'm not the founder of Glacier Consulting. I am currently the president of Glacier. It was founded by a gentleman named Scott Jones, who's still involved with Glacier, and it was founded in Clarkston, Michigan, which is near the Detroit area. Um, I met Scott as when I was working at Clover. He came down to he was an auditor too, and he came to one of my facilities in Mexicali, Mexico, and we ran into each other. Realized that we were like-minded, we had a lot of interests in common. And he asked me on a drive from Mexicali, Mexico to San Diego, would I be interested in becoming a consultant one day? And he said it was going to be a little in the future. I think this was August 2017, and by April, I think 2018, he had offered me a position. So uh, I came in, Glacier was about a year old. So I came in its infancy, and luckily I've been a part of helping it expand, helping it grow, which has been fabulous. I mean, I'm going on my seventh anniversary is coming up on June 11th, and we are head and shoulders away from where we were in 2018.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, important distinction there. So when you came into Glacier Consulting, I'm curious, maybe what were some of the roles and responsibilities that you took, and like how did that evolve as you became president of the company?
I came on as a consultant. There were three or four of us at the time. We were just building. I mean, we were, like any company, we just started taking on more and more clients. And I jumped right in with my experience helping clients go through certification processes, building up their businesses. And I just, again, like when I was at Clover and the work spoke to me, this was even more of a path that I saw opening up. Um, I enjoy every day talking to clients. I enjoy to me, and this is the best way I could say it, Jonathan. In estate planning, it was always a puzzle you were putting together, right? Like every estate plan is not the same, based on wealth, based on need, based on whatever we're talking about. And that's the same in the consulting world. Like, you know, the certifications give us a broad outline of what we have to do. Each client then will meet those requirements in different ways. And so again, I'm putting puzzles together, right? We've worked with a one-man operation in a small 600 square foot office to you know, thousands of a head count in millions of square feet, and that is a total different puzzle to put together. So it just spoke to me, and the fact that I love talking to people. I love to talk, which is why my voice is not very great right now. But it just makes me want to work with clients more and more. So it just was an avenue that just spoke to me, and it continues. I mean, every day that I go to work, and I don't feel like I work, I feel like I get to work on these great projects, but every day it's different. I could be helping somebody with a OSHA related issue. I could be helping somebody with a data sanitization related issue. I can sometimes I get asked to interview potential new employees because for companies, because you build up a trust with your client. You build up, hey, I'm going to lead you in the right way. And to me, that's sky is just the limit. We can go so far with that.
That's really awesome. So
Yeah,
I know you were at Gadget Repair Expo, and the majority of people there were probably repair shops or people in the wireless service industry.
absolutely.
Is there anything you mentioned cybersecurity, or at least I've seen that on the site.
Mhm.
Is there other industries that you guys service to other
Absolutely.
than?
Yeah, absolutely. Manufacturing, we do a lot of work in the R2 is used electronics. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the hurdle you have to meet to become certified to R2. So, um, vast majority of people are working in used electronics, but it's not only that. We take it to the level of NAID or iSigma certification, which, Jonathan, is a company who says, all right, I really want to take what I'm doing for data security or data protection for my clients. I want to take it to another level. So we help clients become certified to that. ISO 27001, which is information protection, which is, protecting how the clients their inventory systems, their internet, all that kind of things are involved. And that's broad. I mean, that doesn't have to be just used electronics. I mean, we're working with a company right now that is a trucking company, so a logistics provider. So they the great thing about the certifications is they can go over broad different areas.
that's really actually awesome.
Mhm.
You might be the perfect person to ask. Are you familiar with the history of how these certifications came about, and kind of how long? I know it's broad because there's many of them that you guys are doing, but like R2 and ISO, why did these come about, and who were kind of like the pioneers to say this is something that the industry needs?
Yeah, I'm not going to be the best person to tell. I can tell you that the ISO came along basically out of manufacturing. The,
Mm,
the very first one that a lot of companies need, and this is an area that I was talking about at Gadget Repair, which is, maybe you're not an R2 company, maybe you don't need that, but ISO 9001, which is a quality management system, it came out of the manufacturing industry and then grew from there. The environmental management system, which is ISO 4001, also, grew out of companies wanting to be a better steward to the environment, right? To be more transparent in how they affect the environment and what they're doing. I'm sorry, I don't know who invented those. I can't tell you
sure.
right off the top of my head, but I can tell you, there's another certification out there called the Recycling Industry Operating Standard, which is great for companies because it takes three ISOs and builds them into one certification. So you're going to get ISO 9, which is the quality, ISO 14001, which is environmental, and ISO 45001, which is health and safety. And all of these are voluntary certifications, Jonathan. So what's great about that is you're being transparent. How you process things, how you affect the environment, and then the 45,001, which is health and safety, is how we protect our employees from the horrible things that could be in warehouses, forklifts, balers, heat, all these kind of things of how employees are protected. So I think the greatest thing about the certifications is, yeah, they can be a little complex. Yes, they're going to cost you some money, but look at all the companies that do it, and it's a voluntary process. Now, I will tell you, a lot of companies will do it because, hey, if I do this, now I can get more business. But I think certifications are great. I think whether you're doing them just because you want to be transparent, or whether you're doing it that you want to be, you want to get further business out of that. To me, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a great process. You find out things internally about your company when you go through that, and you're going to find out things externally, right? One of the things I mentioned earlier is the compliance. Well, if you don't go through a compliance investigation, most companies don't know what they're required to be in compliance to. So once you go through this, so now you have a great idea. And so it's the big ones, OSHA, EPA, things like that. But also, maybe your facility needs a certain permit in a certain, if you're in Atlanta or Dallas or Miami. And so those kind of things can get you into a little trouble. And when you go through the compliance review, you can make sure that you're meeting those requirements.
So a lot of people that'll listen to this are repair shops, like I mentioned. Maybe they have depots. Maybe they're a wholesale supply company for repair parts. What would you say are some of the top certifications that you see that are kind of value add to businesses in that sector, and kind of what is the value add? Why should these shops or suppliers join and actually get certified?
Absolutely. Well, I'll go back to what I just said a few minutes ago. The first one that I think most companies should always consider is ISO 9001, which is a quality management system, the quality of your goods and services. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, you can then show, hey, I have allowed a third party to come in and take a look at my system, take a look at my company, and they agree. I'm meeting the requirements of quality, which is, quality control needs to be there. You have to make sure that you have control over where you buy your parts. So you're not just buying them from the best company or the cheapest company. You're buying quality material. The next one that I think is huge is always the health and safety, because again, transparency and the fact that you come to work here, you're going to be as protected as you possibly can. We've completed risk assessments. We've got the right safety equipment, the right safety measures have been taken, and they're in place. And then ISO 14001, which is an environmental management system, this is how we affect the environment. And then this is, and we have to be open, whether it's good or bad effect on the environment. If it's not so great, then we have to put some controls in place to keep those negative effects from taking place. What I at our booth at Gadget Repair that we wanted to talk about is, yes, we are experts in R2. We think most electronic companies should become R2, but hold on, maybe you're not there yet. And maybe you just need to think about ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, or as I mentioned earlier, the recycling industry operating standard, or also known as RIOS, which is all those three put into one.
Interesting. So, yeah, of the particular, I've heard R2 talked about a lot. We're not an R2 certified location. Let's say you go through that, your company gets R2 certified. I'd love to talk about that process a little bit. Before, I'd love to talk maybe about the outcome, because I think people care about that the most. You've gone through all the hoops, you've changed whatever processes that are necessary to do that. Obviously, you now have a display of public trust with this certification that you stand out differently from your competitors or from other people in the marketplace. But what is the doors that get unlocked, per se, from having R2 that may not be available to the average entrepreneur without it?
Yeah, let's talk about the repair companies, because this is big. Under R2v3, that opened the possibility for more repair companies to become certified. And I'll tell you what, under the R2 2013 version, you had to meet all of the requirements. If you couldn't meet all 13, couldn't become certified. And one of those requirements, Jonathan, was data sanitization. You had to sanitize devices. So now take that to the repair industry where, hey, if somebody brings their device in, they want me to fix it and return it to them. They don't want me to sanitize their pictures and all that other stuff. So now that opened an opportunity for the more repair companies to come into it. Which is you get to make a decision whether you're going to do data sanitization, whether you're going to do some other things. There are 10 core requirements everyone has to meet, but then there's some appendices that you will decide what you want to meet. That process, I think it's a great process. You're going to find out a lot about your company. I think you're going to find out a lot about the industry by going through that process. Now, the benefits of that or what doors that could open is, number one, if you want to get into the carrier level auctions, they have set a threshold that says, if you want to buy my devices, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, those kind of companies, if you want to get into those, you have to become R2. Because again, it allows for that transparency. What you do, where it comes from, what you do with it when it's at your facility, and then ultimately where it goes. And whether it goes to a new end user or, and repair houses are going to have plenty of parts and scrap, that has to go to a verified downstream vendor who's going to keep that out of a landfill, keep that from affecting the environment. And the second part of that, Jonathan, is you're going to develop relationships. Another thing that we talked about at the Gadget Repair was, okay, maybe you're not a wholesaler, but there are a lot of R2 companies out there that, you know, if they have repairable devices, a lot of times they don't have the expertise or they don't have the ability to repair those, and they'll simply send that downstream for recycling. And being a big supporter of repair and repair first, I think it offers an excellent chance for companies to come in and say, hey, I'm a repair house. Let me buy those devices. Let me repair those and keep those from going to end of life. Because the big recyclers a lot of times are just going to scrap those out and get what kind of precious metals they can get out of them and go through that process, which is an important process as well. But I think there's a lot of repair that's possible. And my point being, the R2 above you, the upstream, does not want to sell those to a non-R2 company because it affects their R2. Makes it a little bit more complicated. You have to have more documents in place. So if you become R2 and then allowed to be that B2B repair, I think there's so many opportunities out there that companies can take advantage of that. And then building those relationships, not only above you of where you're going to buy devices, but then having vendors in place below you that you can also build relationships. And as your company becomes bigger and more companies may get involved in recycling, because there's opportunities there as well. That helps build a long-term relationship for the downstream as well.
That's interesting. What are some of the prerequisites? So you mentioned, the data sanitization. Are there other certifications you're required to have to be or to be R2? Is ISO involved in that, or
yeah? So that's a great question. So think of an R2 process as building a house. Okay. The R2 is the roof, okay? The roof has to be supported. There's two different ways to go. You can go ISO, which will be the walls to hold up the roof of your building, which is ISO 14001 and ISO 45001. And if you're doing testing and repairing, ISO 9001 is required. That's one path for you to take. The second path is the RIOS, or the Recycling Industry Operating Standard, is another path, which is the 3 ISOs built into one. And that path, I think, is very helpful to smaller clients because you get about a 20% reduction in audit time. Because instead of 4 standards, it's only 2. So it helps. And if you're reducing audit time, Jonathan, you're reducing dollars. The more you can save there, and it's great for smaller companies as they get started. I highly recommend RIOS for those companies. So that's the 2 paths that you can go. The The other prerequisites is you have to have a commercial facility, so we can't do it out of a garage, can't do it out of the basement, and you have to have at least one employee, at least one human, and so go from there. And like I said, we have worked with clients that have been a one-man operation up to several thousand.
So when you say one employee, there's a lot of repair shops out there that are single operator owners. It's that count. When you say one employee, that can be the owner themselves, or does that mean
absolutely no? It can just be the owner operator is perfectly fine.
The commercial standard, anybody listening to this that's a repair shop, first thing that comes to mind is, hey, I'm in a retail environment, but I have kind of a commercial backing per se in the back of my store. Maybe I have 2,000 square feet of retail, but maybe another 2,000 in the back that's commercial that the customers can't access. Is that a qualifier? Does that count as a commercial location?
It could. I think case by case basis. You can't share a facility with another company that's not going to be certified. So if the facility has used electronics and there's more than one company in there, they all have to be in the certification scope.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we see it all the time where we'll have a company that they have a they have a sales portion in the front, and in the back they've got a small facility where they're storing their items, stuff like that. That's pretty typical. That works every time.
Interesting. Yep. That's very interesting. For the so you mentioned the compliance about actually wiping the devices. I think that's very interesting. Is it Siri that is the one that regulates R2? Do you know?
It is Siri, yeah. So sustainableelectronics.org is their website. They're the ones that back the R2 standard, and I think they do a great job. They a lot of education, a lot of information if you go to their website to learn about the process.
That's very interesting. The reason I bring that up is I'm curious from a repair perspective. You said it was 2023 when they dropped the requirement to
it was the 2013 version.
2013.
It was 2020 when R2 V3 came out, and that was the first time, Jonathan, that you were allowed to pick what part of the appendices. So there's A through G now appendices that you say you can meet the requirements of.
It's interesting. I only bring that up because I know one of the things I've advocated for from Samsung, they finally did it. Apple, I would hope, will eventually come around as a repair mode for these electronic devices where, in a repair environment, one of the biggest risks that we have is data leakage, right? Or someone coming in and, we do a data transfer, or maybe one of my technicians, God forbid, has the customer's password and maybe takes a nude photograph from the customer's device or something like that. You hear about these stories from the big depots. And the way to prevent that in a retail environment, especially, is to have a repair mode where a customer puts their passcode in, the device kind of resets, and it basically opens up as if it's just like a new device with no data on it, and it can't go back to the other mode until the customer puts their passcode in.
Interesting. That's cool.
That functionality is live on, I believe, Google Pixels and Samsung devices, some of the other Androids as well. iPhone, we're still asking for it. We have the ability to test without customer information, but unfortunately, it's a cloud-based test predominantly. So, we put it in repair mode, and then their repair mode kind of goes to a white screen with an Apple logo, and we basically remotely log in via an IMEI. So I was only curious because maybe that was the reason why there was a change made, but maybe not.
I'm sure it was involved. So the core requirement 7 of R2 is data security. So this is the first time the standard came in and said, not only are we worried about what's on that device, but we're concerned about at the facility, who has access to it. And so we have to clearly identify individuals who can have access. We have to limit that access, key card access, all kinds of different things that you can do. We have to do some deeper confidentiality agreements, checks, stuff like that can come into play.
Interesting.
And when you get into, Jonathan, like a NAID certification, or what's called now ISigma certification, it gets even deeper. It's not only like a 7-year background check for criminality and stuff like that, but also it gets into drug testing, things that are now saying, hey, we're going to take it now to another level.
Very interesting. I think for a lot of people, the certifications can seem overwhelming. I think Glacier Consulting, I'm assuming part of the value proposition is we come in and we help you with that process and we make it pretty easy, or we at least make it a lot easier than it would be if you try to do it on your own. Am I correct in that assessment?
100%. The way we position ourselves, Jonathan, is like, okay, you're a company doing what you do best. You've decided to take on this challenge of becoming certified. So we are now a like plug-in environmental health and safety department, right? So you can't go out and hire somebody, or you could, but you can't hire a team of 5 people. We come in as a contractor basis, and I won't say that we make it easy. We make it less challenging because, again, every puzzle that we put together has its challenges. Some companies we get involved in, and they may have somebody who has a little bit of experience. 9 out of 10 times we're working with a company that this is a matter of first impression. They're going to say, Michael, I have no idea how to get this marathon ran. And I usually use the term, we're going to run it a 5K at a time. We're going to take it piece by piece, and we're going to get you there. Typically it takes, and if we're talking about R2, we're talking about a 4, 5, 6 month process. And we want to build a very mature system. By the time an auditor, a third-party auditor comes in, Jonathan, we don't want to barely scratch the surface and say, okay, we're there. We want to have an abundance so that auditor walks out and says, there's no doubt that you're an R2 company. There's no doubt that you're invested in meeting the requirements. And that's what Glacier does. And I think we're rather good at it.
That's really fascinating. Is there a benefit to, I know with a lot of certifications, I don't know enough about R2 or ISO, but is there a benefit to smaller companies? Because a lot of certification programs that I've seen, there's a requirement for like each new employee to at least have a certain level of training or a certain level of knowledge or background checks and all these other things. Am I correct in thinking that, in a way, smaller companies might be listening to this saying like, oh, I'm not ready for it. But there's also the component of, well, actually kind of preparing for it makes it easier to get done when you're a smaller company versus when you have a massive facility and 25 or 100 employees. Is that correct? Or is there really no difference from a certification standpoint with how big you are?
First of all, I'm going to say there's some value to that. Yeah, as a smaller company, then your process is tighter, it's smaller, it's less challenging to become certified. However, the larger companies probably, out of my experience, have a lot of things already in place that they're just not aware of. And so a lot of times when we work with those companies and they'll say, well, we don't have anything, we come and go, well, yeah, you are doing quality control, right? You are doing testing. Maybe it doesn't meet the requirements, but we're somewhat there. You know what I mean? Maybe you're doing a lot of the things and you're just not aware of it. And that's a great thing. And I think I mentioned it earlier about the certification process is you find out a lot internally about your company, which is always great. I always like when the light comes on and companies will go, well, we're not quite as bad as I thought we were. So now we just have to clean some things up and maybe expand what they've done. Again, to me, whether we've got one person or whether we've got 1,000 people, we still have the requirements to meet. Yes, 1,000 people, there's a lot more training involved. But the standards ask us, Jonathan, to make sure that our folks that work for us are competent. So one of the things Glacier helps companies do is build that training program by position to make sure that we've got the proper training in place, not only the work that they do, but making sure they're aware of certain requirements, whether it's OSHA, whether it's legal, whether it's whatever it may be. We go through that with the client and help them build that training model. So they're not only successful as they go through the certification, but now they've got a great groundwork for 2025, 2026, 2027, and
Makes sense. No, that makes a lot of sense. For the repair shops out there that are like, hey, I want to get running with an R2 certification, but I'm concerned that some of the requirements would maybe negatively affect my business. Is there anything you could say to that? I mean, obviously you mentioned the data sanitation, but I know a lot of times with these certifications, they come in and they can be very strict about obviously what you can and can't do. You also mentioned separating it. So that may just be something that every repair shop has to do, is have a separate entity so that doesn't become an issue. But is there anything you could add there to just say, hey, if you're concerned about, you're offering a micro soldering service, or I'm just naming something that might not be in compliance with whatever sort of standard that you're with, it's fine. You would just need to be obviously be doing it under a different company, or that entity may not be the one that's able to get certified. Is that the
Yeah,
correct
I
way of
mean,
looking at that?
yeah. So again, case by case situation where we start working with a client. But I would say to anybody who's listening that are like, what is this going to do for me? What I go through this, and yeah, it's some effort, it's some expense. It totally is um going to take up some of your time. But once you're certified, I mean, and let's talk about R2 right now in the whole world. There's about 1,250 companies that are R2 certified. So once you're certified, it recognizes you as what I would say is one of the best, because you've gone through the transparency process. You've allowed a third party to come in and voluntarily allowed them to come in and take a look at everything you're doing. So you become recognized as one of the best out there. Your sales pitch that you're going to make at the next gadget repair, or the next show you go to, or the next phone call you take, is going to be a little bit more efficient, because now it's verified. You're verified as a certified company that's verified stats and accomplishments. Now you have customer trust. They see you advertise your certification. You see, you've got the logos on your LinkedIn and all those kind of things. Customers now start to trust those businesses and know that you have reliable processes in place. Everybody wants to, I believe that everybody wants to do better for the environment, because right now we know how important that is. And having that trust, or in those kind of certifications that say, we're here to protect the environment from these things, and we're doing everything we can, I think that puts a company above a competitor who could be right down the street.
That's really interesting. How do you mentioned repair a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in this industry for quite some time now, and I know you don't necessarily repair yourself, but I'm sure you're aware that the devices have become more repairable.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the legal laws and legislation, whether it's in Europe or even here in the USA with the right to repair legislation, how has the combination of those two things changed the relationship with companies that are R2 certified, or just recyclers at large, with maybe their repair processes? Could you maybe add something there in terms of how workflows have changed, or types of repairs that maybe weren't done before that are suddenly being done now?
Yeah, I think as the devices have become more expensive, and the awareness that have gotten out there, I think that we've seen. Listen, I can't help but go back to my first experience at the Gadget Repair Expo, which was 2022 in San Antonio, Texas. A client of mine said, "Michael, you should go to this." We were at eScrap in New Orleans, and he said, "You should really go to this." I bought a ticket and went. And I was blown away, Jonathan, by the surgical level of repairs that I saw. And it wasn't just, hey, we do these repairs. I think the biggest thing that they do is they put on the seminars where you're watching an actual repair. I know that they do the competitions and stuff like that, but I remember the first one I went to was, I think they were repairing an iPhone 11 defect that a lot of people see. And it was almost like watching a surgery, like on PBS or something like that. It was really, and that made me want to get involved in gadget repair, in repair, anything related to repair. And that's why we've been a sponsor the last 3 years. I think the coffee sponsor the last 3 years at Gadget Repair. But my point being, I have seen a lot more repair, and I've seen a lot more talent out there. And I think that with the cost of devices, with the awareness of let's not just be a throwaway society, and see if we can repair it. I've had clients say, "Hey, Michael, I feel bad. I've got these 1,500 phones. I'd love to do something with it, but I don't want my R2 to be affected. So I'm just going to send it to my downstream, and that downstream is going to strip that phone and, like I said, get any precious metals out." So here again, I think there's a great opportunity for the repair industry to jump in and become certified and become what's called a downstream vendor. Even though your idea is going to be get those devices and repair them and get them back out into circulation.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think was it eSummit you said you'd been to in New Orleans? Was that
It was
2020?
it was the eScrap conference, which is that's more of a end of life kind of a conference. Still, Glacier plays a role in that. But I was there, and a client of mine was there who turned me on to the Gadget Repair Expo.
Do you remember what year that was?
2022. 2022. Yep, San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio, Texas. The one in New Orleans, I think I had attended that one, not the one in San Antonio.
Okay. The Gadget Repair in New Orleans.
Well, not the Gadget Repair. I'm thinking of
eScrap. eScrap was in New Orleans 2022 and 2023 back to back. So.
And wasn't eSummit kind of like a part of that at the time, or it was like an add-on conference specifically for
you got a great memory. It used to be called the eReuse, and it was a part of eScrap in 2023. And now eSummit is now its own that is backed by Siri.
Yeah, I had a panel there with Nathan Proctor, some of the guys over at CPR.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I remember that one good. It's it's been wild for me. I'm sure you can probably attest to it as well, as like seeing the industry mature is something that I've been very excited about over the years. It's like we all started, including myself, probably fixing phones out of the back of your car in a little office building somewhere, and now here we are getting certifications, and there's standards for parts. One of the things we're working on with like Repairs First and some of the other associations is trying to standardize parts and labor time so we can be a little bit more like a mechanic and actually have standards of how long this should take and what are the part numbers that are used when we do a particular service. So it's been a wild journey.
I think it's been great. And this past year in Miami at the Gadget Repair, our booth had more business, more activity than it's ever had. We're still talking to some of the people. Again, the certification process, Jonathan, it's not always right in the moment for you. So the people that come up to our booth, they gather information, we stay in touch. Maybe they're ready now, maybe they're ready in 6 months, maybe a year from now. The worst thing I can do is go to somebody and try to force a certification on you. You have to have the proper planning and the proper motivation to go through it, because it's going to be challenging. It's going to take some time. But ultimately, I think every single company that was at Gadget Repair, every company that I talked to, there is value to those certifications. And I preach that because, a lot of times, number one, the carrier auctions, they're not going to sell to you unless you have certifications for repair level devices. And it opens up so much opportunity for clients when they want to go out on their own. Like I said, it helps the sales pitch. It helps confidence when people understand that you've gone through this voluntary process. Absolutely.
Who are the people that you see succeeding the most, and what are the services that they're offering that they're empowered to offer with these certifications, and maybe the client groups that they're offering to? Like, I see these, I can't remember the company name. They're big in our space. Iron Mountain, I think, is the company. I'm not sure if they have any of these certifications, but they do data sanitization. They do hard drive wipes. They do a lot of the data destruction. That's just an example I'm trying to give of a service that I could think of that's huge. What are some other ones that you know of?
Yeah, the data sanitization, Jonathan, is huge. Especially when we're talking about hospitals and universities, government entities. That's really great for like a NAID level certification, because most of those kind of situations, they don't want those hard drives reused. They want to see them destroyed. And so that's where that kind of certification comes in. There were, the repair is great. A great service. To stay away from being a throwaway society, especially with the cost of the devices. I know the carriers all have great programs to trade your phone in and get a new this and a new that, because they're not always behind the idea of repairing their devices. They want you to go buy a new one. Testing of equipment is a great service that we see. It is one of the appendix requirements of R2. Test and repair is appendix C. But the recycling portion, I'm seeing a lot more. The ITAD levels, we're seeing a lot more. People dealing with servers and switches and telecom level equipment that sits out in the cornfield for years, and they have to bring it in and service it. Those level of repairs, get that equipment back out into the stream, which I think is great for the environment, and I think it's great overall.
You talked a little bit about how once, getting into the ecosystem of being an R2 certified company, you can essentially have access to maybe companies above you and below you, and you're able to purchase things that you're not able to. At what point does that end? Because I've always been curious about that. You have companies that buy in, these broken devices and will fix them in an R2 certified warehouse, but then at some point they're listed on eBay or they're listed on Amazon or they're sold in a retail environment. So I'm just curious, how does that process work? Where is there just a process C, like as soon as you've done these things, now it's able to be sold to the public, but in order to buy them, you have to be R2. Is that the right way to think about that?
That's the way that it's going, correct.
Interesting.
So the key thing about it, Jonathan, is I'm going to use the word I've used several times, is transparency when we're talking about an R2 company. Where you got your devices, right? Where they came from, and making sure that you have that in place. Now, the second part, and really the important part here now, is what you do with it between the walls of your facility. So if you brought the device in and it's a good device that you think has resale availability, number one, you have to test it. We have to test it for functionality, and we can't just test it and say we've tested it. Records by unique identifier, IMEI, all that stuff have to be in place. Then, if required, if it has data, which 9 out of 10 it's going to, it has to be sanitized. The 2013 version of R2 would allow you to do a factory reset. Those days are over. If a software exists, you must use a software.
Phone
Then,
check, or kind of, I'm curious about these software
yeah,
options.
phone check, Doctor Phone. If we're talking about hard drives, it could be Kill Disk, it could be Wipe OS is a great software that we suggest a lot of times for clients. And not only that, Jonathan, but now after you've wiped the devices with a software, the standard requires at least 5% have to have recovery attempts put to them. Okay. So, and I'm not talking about verification. I'm talking about a commercial software has to go onto the device and attempt to recover files.
Interesting.
So it's taken it to another level again. And so now, again, records have to exist for all of these things by unique identifier, so we can clearly show each device went through this process. And then if you have that and your own quality control has said, this device is ready to be put up for sale, you're allowed to sell that to anyone you want. Okay. The moment that it does not pass, or you do not have the ability to do that testing, whatever the case may be, then that's when it has to be diverted to an approved downstream vendor who, best case scenario, is their R2 as well. Then it goes to them to process. Now, there's some hope that the downstream vendor will have the ability to hopefully repair it if you can't, test it if you can, to hopefully get it back to reuse as well. So if we build that chain, R2, 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 or certified, then hopefully we're getting more of these devices back to reuse, and we're not sending so many to smelt and scrap and different processes like that.
It's so helpful to know about like that granular example, because I can apply it to my own shop, and I'm sure it's applicable to most shops as well that do data recovery. We are a pretty big mail-in data recovery spot in the US. You can go on our website, get a free shipping label, mail us your hard drive, flash drive, cell phone. You know, I have micro soldering technicians, level 3 techs that'll go in, and maybe it needs a head stack assembly to get the hard drive working, or maybe the flash drive has a broken USB head. We'll resolder one on. We can get those working again. And obviously we have the tools you're talking about to recover the data. So it's an interesting selling point to shops that are maybe doing these things already to kind of rethink the model of, hey, look, you're already doing data recovery. This is something that's required in the process of wiping a device. You don't think about that, because I had never thought about that. I didn't even think that's one of the steps to do. You think of just wiping it, but now it would make sense that, hey, a value proposition of an XiRepair to these banks and whatnot is like, look, if you were coming to me and saying, hey, you want this data recovered, I would be the guy you would be calling. So I'm also the guy you want to call when you want it to be gone.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And listen, I mean, the worst thing that a company, small or big, could have is some kind of a data breach, right? Something gets through your system, and then now we've got word of mouth, or we've got social media that people can start posting, and that could kill a business. So that kind of a process, I think is amazing. I know when it first came out and people were like, wait a minute, I have to use the software and now I have to recover. But think about the reputation that you're building, right? I'm building a reputation that nothing's going to get out of my facility. I'm not going to have a data breach. Your data is protected with me. It'll be destroyed. Because I've been there with companies who have had data breaches, and that is no fun, because it's just going to lead to a loss of reputation, and that in a competitive market that we have, that's just going to put you way behind.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. I one that comes to mind is when Apple had those few leaks with their their tech depots over the inappropriate images of a young lady that was leaked online. You think about those reputation risks, and it's just hard to, you really can't come back from that in some ways.
Well, and then more than likely, Jonathan, to make that situation go away, you're going to have to spend some dollars, right? Like you're going to have to go, usually what happens is the person who gets the device that still has data on it contacts the person the device came from. And so now you've got a two-headed process coming at you, and both of them are usually looking to get paid. And
they're smart and they get an attorney. So
absolutely. Then the lawyers come back into it, and now we're all in trouble. But I think that's those things make the standard better. They make it yes, it's harder to meet their requirements, but again, there's only 1,200, and I don't have the exact number, but there's 1,250 some as we speak today that are R2. I don't have the numbers on the ISO, but there's probably thousands of ISO companies. I think any of these certifications have value. If it's right for your company, have a plan to become certified, have a plan to get involved in these. And I think the upside to all of them are what the companies are looking for. Increased reputation, customer satisfaction, and then grow your business.
I really like this granular example of the hard drives, because again, for the audience listening, that's where really what I want them to take away from this is to kind of expand their idea of how R2 could benefit them or these certifications, and using that data recovery example. So critical, because I think it'll click to anyone that listened to that. So what are some other services? You mentioned refurbishing devices. Could you maybe give us a few granular examples of how there's money in that, right? Like, walk me through. You get R2 certified and you have access to an auction. What are these auctions like, and how much money is in there to make as a company that gets R2 certified?
Well, the auctions, Jonathan, I will tell you, they're not easy to get into. First, you have to, reach R2. And I don't know all the metrics, and I think that's on purpose. They don't want you to know all the metrics to get into them. But once you're into them, you have access to top quality devices. And there's a lot of R2 companies out there. That's all they want. They want to bring in an A device. They want to run it through their software. They want to put it into a box with their logo on and sell it. But then there's other auctions where they've got broken or damaged devices, where repair companies can get involved in that, and start to refurbish those. I've seen some clients build a whole practice on it, that have said, hey, listen, I didn't do repair, but now I've realized that we're buying these devices at a much smaller amount. We're able to do the work. Now we get them out on eBay or their own site, and they're selling them for, a pretty good dollar. I will tell you, I think the best place for some of the repair companies that are listening out there that are, where can I fit in, is there's, again, 1,250 companies that are R2. Not all of them are going to do repair. And you can go to the Siri website, look them up. If Appendix C, test and repair, is a part of their scope, they do it. But if they don't have that, they're not doing that. It may say test only. So if it says test only, then, the repair process isn't there as well. And after you became R2, you could start, reaching out to those companies and let them know you're in their area, or, build a program, a marketing program to get those devices. Because again, they're going to send those to the big downstream vendors who are going to end the life of those devices. And so maybe, or not maybe, there is opportunity to jump in there and start getting those devices and starting to get them back out there and make some pretty good money in that process.
I think it excites anyone to get a contract with maybe a bank, an education institution, maybe another R2 certified downstream vendor that's not doing repair, like you're saying. I'd love to know if you could share, like, on the hard drive and data sanitization processes, are a lot of these contracts with companies per device? Is that kind of how, hey, I'm a bank, I want to get rid of these hard drives? Are we paying, repair shops that have become R2 certified and are wiping these things properly, or the proper ISO certified? Are we getting paid on a per device basis, or is it just a subscription model? Like, does it vary? It's completely different by every company.
Yeah, I think it varies. I've seen it several different ways. I think usually the bigger hospitals, universities, things like that, I'm sure that they're doing it on a subscription based, or just an overall agreement. I have seen some where they're like, per device, this is what we charge. And that's what a lot of the softwares, that are out there, they do it by device. And the more that you use it, then the per device charge comes down a little bit. Phone checks that way. I think Wipe OS for hard drives is that way. I think that's the model that a lot of people use, or a lot of companies use.
Phone check is such a good thing that you brought up, because we're a reseller, and we buy devices and resell them from customers. So reuser might be the right word, but we use phone check. And so, you mentioned that as one of the requirements in using a software like that. Just like with the data recovery side of things, a lot of these repair shops listening are going, oh, these requirements are too big, they're too strenuous. And it's like, no, you might already be using some of these softwares that you need to pass these requirements or pass the certifications.
Right. And one of the important things to know, Jonathan, is the system that you build to meet these requirements is not a one size fit all. Most of the people on this call do not need a Coca-Cola or a GM level system. And that's what Glacier helps companies do. We come in and we develop the system based on need. And the best way I can put it is, most companies don't need an inspection for an inspection for an inspection. They need one, or they need to meet the requirements, and we customize that. And a smaller company is going to have a smaller system. A bigger company is going to have a bigger system. So yeah, my point is I don't want companies to be nervous thinking that it's going to, be so big that they can't maintain it. Number one, we help build a system that works for you. And then also Glacier offers a annual maintenance program, which is, again, plugging in as their R2 EHS department to help keep them maintained as it grows. And a well-built system will be built to be able to grow with the company as needed. So that's a key point to it.
That's really fascinating, really interesting. Well, is there a place that people in the audience can go to actually find out more about Glacier's Consulting? I know you guys have a website.
Absolutely. www.glaciercs.com is a great place to go. We have a LinkedIn page. We are putting on some webinars right now. We did one back in early May. We're going to have webinars on a regular basis. If anybody wants to sign up for our newsletter that'll talk about the webinars, dates, we're going to spend some time going over requirements, not only for R2, we may talk about CTIA. That's one we haven't talked about yet that might be a good fit for some companies. Now, you're going to have some certifications in place before you go for CTIA, but that's one that a lot of people are after because they want to, be able to sell on Amazon and be able to get involved in that. The webinars and the newsletter are there to educate. Of course, we're in the business of taking on clients, but we hope people want to come and do a project with us, but we want to help educate more people out there on the requirements and the standards that are available and just how we can help them out.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think this was a lot of value. I really appreciate you doing this. I have one last question I wanted to leave you with. I was asked at Gadget Repair Expo, if there was a market for government contracts. And I know in our industry, there's definitely some players that are probably privately doing that and really crushing it. In my own city, we have one of the largest Air Force bases here in Montgomery, Alabama. We've done some work in government contracts before. I'm curious how you might think that, one, do you know any people that are R2 certified that have been able to use that as leverage to say, hey, and I'm reputable and I can get these government contracts? But two, is this something that's a value add that you would say in your own experience that the government sees as, hey, this is a distinguished company that we should work with for maybe data destruction, maybe repairing devices that the military owns, and so on and so on, or the government at large?
Yeah, the answer to both of those, Jonathan, is yes. I've known companies that have done that, and yes, it's going to help your ability to get into those kind of situations. Because otherwise, most of those contracts are going to ask you to build those systems, and they're already there. You don't have to go out and do it, so it's already there for those kind of contracts. ISO 9001 against the quality of your goods and services. I would bet most of those contracts are going to be heavy on the quality of your goods and services. So if you were ISO 9001 certified, ISO 9001 or RIOS, the one that I spoke about several times, where it has all three of them built in, the government contracts are going to want to make sure you're doing something to protect the health and safety of your workers. So yes to both of them. And I think case by case situation, certifications can only help the company.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on, man. I really appreciate you doing this. I hope
absolutely. I missed you at the Gadget Repair because you had a line of people, even though you were right next to it. So I appreciate this opportunity. One of my favorite things to talk about is Glacier Consulting. So I never have a problem talking about that.
So I'm sure people can definitely reach out to you or the company online to find out more information. I'll make sure to put it in the links of any of the things we post about this. So thanks again for doing this, friend.
Anytime. I appreciate it, Jonathan. This was a great experience.